grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, in a section called Mattapan, which also had the nickname Murder Pan. I grew up around a strong family, a strong loving family, good church community, but the neighborhood that we lived in was a pretty rough neighborhood. It was in this environment where the love of the church and the love for family was birthed. Also, the love of music and the love of the camera also was birthed. My uncle, Robert Cecil Johnson Jr., he was the family photographer, so I've spent many decades just looking at his pictures and the albums that he has taken. And so it was just awesome seeing all these decades of photography. And I remember when I was in the 8th grade, we were going to visit Plymouth Plantation. And when we went to visit Plymouth Plantation, they gave all the students instructions to bring a 35mm camera. My grandmother, my mom, they bought me a 35mm camera, and I went and took pictures, and that was the start of my love of the camera. I began to take more pictures of my neighborhood and things that were going on in the neighborhood. So I was able to document a lot of what the neighborhoods look like and just starting bringing that camera outside with me. The hood where I grew up was pretty rough. You know, between the late 80s and the early 90s, there was 160 murders a year. So there was a lot kind of going on at the time with the drugs and the guns coming into the neighborhood. So with this camera, I began to go outside and to capture some of the pictures that you're able to see right now. I grew up with my mother, my grandmother, and my uncle who had Down syndrome. They lived in the house with me. This was my entire family setup. I never met my dad, and we as a family did not have a lot of money. My mother was on welfare. She also had disability because of a mental illness. And then my grandmother was a hairdresser. And so we didn't have a lot of money growing up. Although there was never a need that was unmet, there were many wants that I could not get. And so street life became interesting, and I began to get lured in to some of what was going on out in the street. My grandmother, my mom, they tried everything to shelter me and keep me away from what was going on outside, but in many ways a woman cannot do a man's job, and it was my dad's job to really protect me and keep me from the street. And with him not being there, I was left to the wolves. Two things that dominated my mind at the time as a youngster was sex and was violence. In elementary and middle school, I had many fights with students that were at school, and also at the same time, between the ages of 12, really 10 to 14, I had been sexually assaulted by several older girls and women. I can remember being in middle school, and there were two girls who were in the 8th grade, and one grabbed me by the arms, the other one grabbed me by the legs, and they dragged me under the stairs as we were waiting on our bus to come. They dragged me under the stairs, and the one who had my legs began to pull my pants down, and the other one, I started to yell, and so she grabbed my mouth, and then the only way I could get her hand off me, I hucked up a Louis. I was like, and spit in her hand, and then they let me go. But it was that traumatic experience that caused me to really say, I guess I need to figure out how I need to protect myself